Okay, we are good. Let me
All
just
right.
start up the recording again and we are good. We are good. Good.
Okay. Very good. Thank you all and welcome to the February 10th regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, may I get you call a roll, please?
Mayor Rilling,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis,
Here.
Miss Yang.
Here.
We have 7 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business tonight is to review and approve the meeting minutes from our January 6th meeting. Can I get somebody to move that for discussion and approval? Thank you, Kendrick. Any changes, updates, etc., to the minutes as presented in our package?
Yeah, I've actually got a couple things, Ed.
All right, Tom.
The part referencing last month's registrar of voters for the early voting, it says reviewed the request for $241. That should read 240,500. And then on the next page where we start off with contingency under additional information, said the balance was 2.6 million. That should read 2.4 million.
Thank you. Any other changes to the minutes as presented? Seeing none with the changes Mr. Ellis presented, all in favor of approving the minutes in the package, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda, and we're shifting the order a little bit just to allow people to be here as they need to, is a special capital appropriation request. We can find this on slide page 13 of our package. Tom, do you want to introduce and set this up, please?
Yeah, so this is for the purchase of the property at 6 Butler Street. For those of you who don't know, that is towards the if you're facing Stepping Stones, it's to the left. It's opposite one of the new apartment buildings. And the city is interested in purchasing this for an undisclosed reason at this point, but we do have Darren Callahan here from Corporation Counsel who will speak to it further, and if he's at liberty to discuss the purpose of it, he will. Take it away, Darren.
Hey, Tom, this is Jared. I'm going to lead off, if that's okay. I just want to give a little bit of background and the history on this, because it has been approved in the past, but was then removed. This item was originally going to be funded out of ARPA money, and it was probably came up around October, November, and everybody worked really diligently to get the project done in time for the as we all know, we had the deadline of December 31st hanging over our heads to get all the projects committed for the ARPA funding. And in this case, we weren't quite able to get the contract done just because of negotiations with the current owner, and weren't quite able to get it over the line and get it done by December 31st. So we had to pull that out of ARPA funding, and the reason that we're here today making this request is for the special appropriation, which would be a capital project and funded with bond funds. So I just wanted you to know the background. It's been through the Finance and Claims and the Common Council, because it was ARPA funding, and they had been approving any of the changes in ARPA funding. So that went through there when we were proposing that it be done through ARPA funding, but unfortunately we had to shift gears.
Thank you for the setup, Jared. Before we go any further, mistake on my part, can we move this item for discussion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Ed.
And Ed, when do you read the resolution? Is that just before the vote or now?
We can read the resolution now, please.
Irene, you want to take that or am I okay to do it?
I think you can. Am I supposed to read it? No, you can read it.
Okay, I have it right in front of me. So, action requested, resolution requesting a special capital appropriation for the Economic and Community Development Division in the amount of $1,100,000 for the acquisition of 6 Butler Street.
So I guess Darren, any additional context, please?
Sure. Can the commission hear me well enough?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. So just briefly, this is a target property. It provides an alternate, an additional means of access to Matthews Park. We have obviously the Lockwood's Matthew Mansion and stepping stones located in that area. There are other public assets that also this would link connectivity to. It was cited by our Economic Development Department, a former Chief of Economic and Community Development, Jessica Bonashek, as a priority property to attempt to obtain. It's my understanding that it's part of the park plan to provide additional access to Matthews Park. So that's the driving purpose behind the acquisition. It's a small parcel of land, but the value is the connectivity it provides from an alternate area from the main entrance. As for an update on the contract negotiations, originally the acquisition would have included an easement in favor of the owner of the property that would have provided access to around 30 parking spaces across the street in the project that Toll Brothers are building. Once it came down to really getting into the detail of the easement, it became clear that there would be certain modifications that would be necessary for the city versus the current private owner to really utilize that as a parking asset. And as we began discussing that with the grantor of the easement, it just wasn't going to work out as far as what we needed for that easement to look like. So what we were able to do is negotiate a reduction in price. So initially it was approved back in, I believe, August for $1.4 million. We've arrived at $1.1 million without the parking, and we're still trying to work out some details to transfer that easement to a new property with the current owner, so that we can acquire the property without that portion of the land rights. So that's just a long way of saying that by the time the end of December rolled around, we weren't in a position to go to contract, and we did not want to lose the ARPA funding. So that money was used to fund a portion of the upcoming paving contract, and these capital funds will simply be less capital funds that'll go towards paving for this coming year. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. Hi, Ed, this is Troy. Quick question, Darren. I understand that this was supposed to be for ARPA funds, but now you're saying are you putting it into this year's capital budget that we just got last week? Is that the concept?
I'll let Jared answer the question, but the concept is that this, between the ARPA funds and the capital funds, it was just moving one set of funds to one area and reducing the amount of funds that would be necessary for paving. Jared, could you kind of pick that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Darren explained it well. It's going into the capital, will be part of the capital plan. Ultimately, we'll issue bonds for it this next time around, And as Darren has said, the change when we knew that we weren't going to meet the ARPA deadline was that we allocated this money for paving.
So essentially, it should be an economic wash for the city. Instead of coming from ARPA funds, it'll come from capital funds, and the paving contract will just have a larger portion of ARPA funds for the overall contract amount.
But bottom line, it does take the capital budget up by $1.1 million. Yes?
Yes.
Oh, are you okay? Are you I understand that we missed the deadline, but is this I heard somebody use the word wash. It sounds like, are you reducing something in the capital budget to add this?
They're switching the ARPA funds to the pavement,
Yeah.
to the paving stuff, and then they're using what would have been a capital fund through bonding for this piece of property. So they're kind of like switching or swapping.
Wait a minute, I think we're confusing ourselves here. Bottom
when
line, city
when
budget,
we-
yes, but we are going to take the capital budget up by $1.1 million. Elsewhere in the budget, there will be savings associated with what was originally a paving plan, but that paving plan is not part of the capital budget, as I understand it. It's a different line item in the overall city budget. So the capital budget will go up by $1.1 million. Elsewhere on the city operating budget side, which is where I believe paving is, we will see a commensurate reduction. Please correct me if I am misrepresenting or misunderstanding that.
The paving
Yeah.
is within the capital budget.
Right.
It is.
Yes.
All
And
right,
so
so then
when we
are not,
when
then
we
you're
were
not going to take the capital budget up in total.
That's right. And when we received the request for paving this year, it was reduced by an amount that was equal to what we're planning to do through ARPA funding.
Okay. So then I stand corrected. The overall capital budget, then Jared, will be flat. It just will be reallocated from paving to the acquisition.
Right.
Correct.
And how come I would feel more comfortable if I saw that in the action requested, the language?
What's the resolution?
In the resolution, yes. I don't see any, there's no offset that, except
Yeah,
for this
there's no
verbal we're
offset
talking
stated in
about.
the resolution.
Right. And normally I think if this were being done in one shot where we were actually transferring money from ARPA to paving and then making this transfer as well, we would have them all into one resolution. But we've already done that other aspect of it, that other piece of it, which is putting the paving money into the ARPA funds. That piece has already been done. So I think I understand what you're saying, Troy, and normally I would agree with you that those should all be contained within one resolution, but because of the timing of getting the ARPA funding finalized, we had to do that piece of it before the 31st.
Is that piece documented someplace, Jared?
Yes. Yes, it would be in the minutes of the Finance and Claims meeting as well as the Common Council meeting.
Okay, I'm not thrilled about that, but if that's what you're saying it is. But let me just go back to the original point. I know where this spot is. It was a small house before. I shouldn't say a small house. It was a pretty large house in a right near Lockwood Mansions. What is the goals of using for that property? Did I miss that?
No, I don't. I did my best to articulate it. I wasn't. I'm on the attorney side, not the policy making side. But my understanding is from just looking at the previous memos by Jessica, is that it provides effectively additional access to Matthews Park. I mean, fundamentally, it provides either an alternate driveway or access point into and from the park that allows greater circulation throughout the Wall Street / West Avenue neighborhood area. In it being a large park as it is, it was something that was cited in my understanding from reading the memo and our master parks plan as a need.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of the only properties, the other property being the gas station is abutting the park. And it's a piece of property that in the long term is going to provide much better use than having something else there that we can't control. There'll be parking opportunities. It's right next to Farah Park. As most of you know, Nick Farah is the sergeant that lost his life in the line of duty back in 1971. The park was named after him. And that will allow for extra parking, extra access, kind of a walkway. There's a lot of opportunities. We just felt that this is one of the only properties abutting this park, and the other being the gas station, which right now is still there.
Yeah, I'm very familiar. Is the building still up, Darren or Mr. Mayor or whatever? I mean, I'm not sure on the property.
It's currently a vacant lot.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Okay.
I have a number of questions. Who is the owner of this property right now?
It is a real estate investment company. One of the principals is Brandon Lakoff, but I don't have their LLC name in front of me at the moment. I believe it's Capital something.
Yeah, the LLC is Six Butler Properties LLC. This property under our assessment is appraised at $400,000, and it was purchased by Six Butler Properties, which is a Greenwich developer, for $392,000 in December of 2019. There is a fairly extensive, they've gone through a whole, here it is. There's a whole plan that they submitted to develop this, and essentially it looks like it's creating a way between Orchard Street and Butler Street. Who owns the two properties between Wood Run? Who owns the courtyard in the front abutting West Avenue? And who owns the parking structure behind that?
I'm not familiar with who owns those, but speaking just to the assessment, we did have the property independently appraised. It came in just shy of $1 million based on current sales in the area. There was one current sale that in that area that was really driving up prices. I would say that our assessor's assessment has it undervalued based on our independent appraisals on the property.
By 2.5 times. This property, if I read this correctly, is 1.9 acres. It's 1 of an acre. Is that right?
It's 0.9 acres, but effectively we review this with the planning and zoning director, and they can get approximately 20 units on the property because of the parking rights that they have from across the street. They have 30 some odd parking spaces available to the property. So once you value the number of units and the number of parking spaces and look at the comparative sales in the area over the past 12 months. That's how they arrived at that number. I believe it was 980. It was close to $1 million in value. But we
Okay,
did
so-
have it appraised, and we had it appraised by Bimini Associates, who we utilize pretty often on our tax field.
So the value is a developed price, a developed value of demoing the lot, clearing everything, paving it, putting in parking spaces. Is that correct?
It's a land value, assuming that you could get an entitlement to 20 units.
Yeah, it was appraised at highest and best use.
May I ask a question? Was this already approved and it's a matter of swapping dollars between capital and ARPA?
That's correct.
Are we?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so this
So
was
we're
already
going around in
approved.
circles on something that was already approved.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
So then, ladies and gentlemen of the BET, it is simply not up to us to value whether or not we should acquire the property. That's been approved already by the city, by the Common Council. Our job is to simply say, are we comfortable with the money in the capital appropriation being flip-flopped? Artie, it looked like you had a question. I'm sorry. You're on mute, Artie. Artie, you're muted.
Sorry, to Ed's point, then to be clear, this has already been approved and we're just approving the flip-flop.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my
I
understanding.
wanna clarify something here. It was approved as an ARPA project.
Correct.
It has not been approved as a capital
Right.
project and as a capital appropriation. So this, you would need, this action needs to be done. This is not just, just a formality, what you guys are doing by doing
Well, but
this.
it's
you'd
it's
be
a net
approving
zero
it.
to the city,
You
right?
would be the first step. I'm sorry?
But it's a net zero to the city. In other words, it really is a swapping of dollars. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, Ed, think about it this way. Normally, we would have maybe a $6 billion paving contract. Well, this year the contract will be $1 million or $1.1 million less because we've already amended the paving contract to add $1.1 million of ARPA funds to it.
Yeah.
So economically, it's a wash, but as a matter of a formal approval process, this is a necessary step.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ed, yeah, I understand. The distinction that Jared made is a very important one, in my opinion. Yes, I felt comfortable approving this I guess it was approved as an ARPA deal. But now with the fact that what we're looking at with the budget and the capital budget, I don't know if we're going to talk about later or whatever in our current operating budget. I just think that based on that piece of property, I've seen that property a million times. I don't think you're on a park there. That extra 1 acre is not going to do anything in that area. There's a little parking beside behind the wall. This is opposite the art center there. So I'm not comfortable with this now. I mean,
It's not for parking though.
I'm sorry.
It's not meant for parking. I think you mentioned it's a parking space. It's not meant for parking. It's meant for egress and ingress.
All right. But
Yes, I understand what it is for, Ed.
Right.
There's an entrance into that park to like 5 steps, 10 steps down the street. I mean,
okay.
I mean, it's not.
Okay, hang on.
I mean, I know I'm very familiar with the area.
At some point, this is about whether we want to approve or not, and we will take it to a vote, and we will see what happens as a vote. That said, before we get to a vote on this subject, are there any additional questions or comments related to clarity before we make a decision?
Yes. What happened there's an extensive engineering site report that was done on 6 Butler Street development, prepared by Greenwich Realty Development, the owners of this property. It's 50 pages long. What has happened? Why are they not why are they interested in selling this? And why, what happened to what they were thinking about as the plan?
My understanding, Ms. Yang, is that they were I don't remember the name of the potential purchaser, but it was an entity that wanted to put, I believe, some level of affordable housing there, or moderate income housing there. It would have jammed in an enormous amount of units on a very small parcel of land. That developer, I think, understood that the city had a desire to acquire the property and was willing to look maybe elsewhere for their development.
So if they've run into, I mean, let's be clear, this parcel is 0.19 acres. It's a fifth of an acre. Is that correct?
That is correct. And in the city of Norwalk right now, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
So this would value, the valuation on this property is essentially $5 million per acre.
I'm not sure that there's an exact correlation like that, but I guess you could look at it that way. It's really a matter of how many residential units that you could place in the property and still park it. This property happens to be very unique in the sense that, there's a whole history to it, but the property on the opposite side of the road that's being developed by Toll Brothers granted them a parking easement that they could park up to 30 cars. So, you know, when you have a property that you can, because of, you know, the way our zoning regulations read, you can jam on, you know, if you build to the very edges of the boundary, you know, 20 residential units, and you look at the value per unit and you could park them, it really drives up the value substantially. So I understand that it's shocking that a property could be appraised at that value, being only 0.2 of an acre. But for this one, we did have it independently appraised by an appraiser that we, again, regularly used for our tax appeals. I believe it came in, around 980. I don't have the appraisal in front of me, but it was shockingly high.
Well, that's considered that it's a developed property. I would feel comfortable approving this at the appraised value of roughly $400,000. Is there, excuse me, Ed, I'm speaking. Is there any reason why we can't go back to the potential seller and renegotiate the price?
Let me add that this has been a very convoluted process from the very beginning. It involved land swap that never really happened. It involved buying the property along with guaranteed parking spaces over at the Toll Brothers garage, which would be 30 or 35 parking spaces. And the value at that time was listed at 1.4 million. The appraisal we have is the fact that what they can do with that property if they kept it. And that would be able to build, as Mr. Callahan said, several residential units. It also, with us purchasing it, there was a talk where I think it was Pacific House was going to build some units there, but that was part of the land swap. They were going to move their units up to North and Main and North Avenue, the property there, which the housing commissioner for the state of Connecticut was very pleased with. But having the number of residential units right there at Matthews Park, we didn't think it was really a great idea, and we felt that we could make better use of it and have that property available for our use, whatever we determined.
So they would not have received zoning approval for this developed property.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry?
they would have received it over the counter. It would have been an over the counter approval. That I did confirm with Mr. Kleppen. But they did not proceed with the approval for the reasons that the mayor just mentioned.
Is there, given that this funding was the ARPA, which is now gone, so theoretically that funding for this property is gone, can we go back and renegotiate the price? Is there any harm to that?
We
Well,
have, we've been in discussions with the owner. The original price was 1.4 million, as I mentioned, with property, with guaranteed parking spaces in their garage. Again, that was something that we just couldn't pull together. It was a very convoluted kind of arrangement. Right now, we've had many discussions with the developer. The price remains at 1.1 and he will not negotiate any further. And we've exhausted many hours of negotiations and talking and discussing. And again, it was very flipping properties, giving parking spaces. This is the cleanest way that we ended up coming to an agreement on, is the cleanest way to give us that property again, which is only one of two properties right now that are abutting Lockwood Matthews Park.
So the clear answer is no on negotiation, further negotiation.
No, I've been involved. And the mayor's been heavily involved, as well as corporation counsel in this process, and formerly Jessica Bonashek. The price they really want is $1.4 million. We've convinced them to move their parking easement to a separate property and work with the current grantor of that easement in order to negotiate that 1.1 million. But it is commonly a theme as we continue along in this process, and we're reminded quite often that they really want is $1.4 million. So the 1.1 million is we're not going to be able to convince them to reduce the price lower. That I'm convinced with.
Well, I think there's a difference between what they want and what it's worth. And somehow I don't see how this property is worth $1.1 million of additional.
With all due respect, Ms. Yang, that's fine. I would suggest we've been given an answer by the city that they believe that there is no opportunity for renegotiation. So at this point, I would suggest we bring this item to a vote and we let ourselves determine the path forward through vote. Otherwise, we are having a circular conversation. Yes, Artie.
Good question. Does this have to go back to the council for approval since the way we're purchasing? No? Okay.
Well, actually, this is because it's a special capital appropriation. This is step one of a 4-step process. After this, it's planning and zoning, then finance and claims, and then the full council.
Okay.
So it does have to go back for approval.
Yes.
To council.
Yes.
Well, so just to be clear, the council approves two things when they approve the acquisition of property. They approve the acquisition and they approve the funding source. And those two things did occur through the ARPA funds, but now the ARPA funds are no longer available. So now we're approving. There still is a pending authorization to acquire the property. There's just no funding for it. This will round out the funding requirement to round out the full authorization. But technically, there is currently an authorization to acquire the property.
All right, with those clarifications, I'd like to bring this to a vote. All in favor of approving the resolution as presented, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed, Troy.
I'm opposed. I'm willing to approve it at a lower point.
So noted. Thank you, Ms. Yang. The resolution is approved 5-2. moving along to the next agenda item on our list this evening is a review of, in other business, of the contingency tracker and the presentation of the FY26 recommended operating budget. Tom, Jared, I'm not sure whether you'd like to just clear the contingency tracker first and then review the operating budget presentation, or the other way around. I'll defer to you.
Yeah, contingency will be quick. If you're okay with that, Jared.
Jared's muted.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, for the first time in quite a while, no contingency requests this month. So nothing to vote on. And of the beginning budget of $2.6 million at the beginning of the year, we are now at $2,151,000.
Mr. Chairman, it's Troy. Quick question for you, Tom. Where are we? I know I keep asking this every month. We're into February. Where are we with the negotiations on the major? I know with this, we set up this contingency for that purpose, but can you give me an idea where we are? I know we're negotiating, but
yeah, no. Unfortunately, it sounds like a broken record. It's ongoing. I don't know if the mayor or Jared have anything else to add to it, but I know that it's fairly complex because there are 6 different unions that we have to get to agree. So either one of you guys have anything further to add?
Well, all the contracts expired last June 30th, actually. And we are constantly meeting with the union delegations to discuss the and we're closer with some unions than we are with others. Obviously, for obvious reasons, we don't talk about where we are and what the numbers are right now. But we're meeting with the unions on a regular basis. We have another meeting coming up with the police union, I think next Tuesday, whatever the 24th is. But we're having a meeting with them, and we've met with the fire department, all the unions, and right now we haven't reached a meeting of the minds, but on some we're closer than others.
thank you.
All right. As we move into the presentation of the FY26 operating budget, I'd like to ask us to note our questions to allow Jared to actually review the presentation and then come back with questions at the end, please, just so he can get through his remarks.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor, anything you have as an opening remark?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I say it every year that it's going to be a difficult year, but this year in particular is presenting tremendous challenges. As you know, we had a revout in 2023, and because of the housing war, I guess lack of a better term, the housing war, where people were bidding up the prices of residential units, and the fact that a lot of our office space, we're seeing vacancies in office space greater than we have in a long time. Because I believe that's the result of COVID and large office space kind of being if you will, a dinosaur right now. But so we're still working. The numbers you're going to see tonight are, as you know, being involved in this process. The numbers you see tonight are an initial presentation. They can change in many different ways. They can go up, they can go down. I guess they could even go sideways. From the very beginning, if you look at my administration, we have kept tax increases historically low, while still providing over a 70% increase to the Board of Education. We've tried to be fair all around. We've tried to keep taxes low so that we don't force people out of the city of Norwalk, but also recognizing the fact that our public school system is really very important, and we try to fund it as much as we possibly can. But again, this is a very, very difficult year, much more than any other year that we've faced. All of you have been, most of you have been a part of the process for quite some time, and I truly appreciate that because it's not been easy. But so what you're going to see right now is something that concerns all of us. And that's what I have to say. But again, we try to keep taxes as low as possible. And we've had over a 70% increase over the time that I've been in office to the Board of Education budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jared, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor, for that introduction. And I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you all.
We've got it, Jared. Looks good.
See it? Okay. All right. All right. 25-26 year budget. This is my first complete budget cycle that I've been through. At the outset, I want to thank Tom Ellis for his work, and also Agnes for her work, and in bringing me up to speed, and you know, everything that they do throughout the process. So I thank them very much. They're very well trained and very competent, and you know, obviously it goes without saying that we couldn't have done this without you. So thanks. All right. So the first slide is just the calendar and the budget development process. This takes us through to the end, up to Cinco de Mayo. This week we have a few stops, obviously tonight and then tomorrow with the full Common Council, and then on Thursday with the through the Finance and Claims Committee, a presentation to the public in a public hearing. And then the Common Council will set the budget cap on the 25th of February. We've talked a lot about a number of the challenges that we're facing in some of the preceding hearings that we've had, and even last year, I think, because a lot of these are you know, started last year. The 2023 real estate revaluation is a big one, as the mayor pointed out in the beginning. We have a budget request from the Board of Education of 9.7%, or $22.6 million. That's the increase amount. We have a state mandated motor vehicle tax reform. I'll get into that a little bit later and go into some of the details. We've talked about it at various different meetings, some of the details of it, but we've been able to come up with some numbers and how that will impact the average person. So we'll get to that a little bit later. There was also a state grant that was it's been in effect and been a possibility for a number of years now, about 5 or 6 years. The city received it for 2 years. The grant is based on increases in sales tax revenue at the state level. In other words, when the sales tax revenue hits a certain threshold, then the grant goes out to different cities and towns. For example, the reason I say we're removing it is because we don't know, and we don't know if we're going to get that revenue or not. So, for example, if when this budget gets adopted, we won't know if we get this grant until probably August or September of this year. And if I had to bet on it, I would say the odds are against it. I don't know that. You know, haven't heard that sales are super high in the state, and the threshold is pretty high. And so I am doubtful that we'll get this, so we have not put that into the budget. It's a challenge. That was about $1.7 million. There are a number of one-time revenues in this current budget. We had a few different agreements with Spinnaker Housing Authority. We also had a tax sale this year, and we had assumed $4.5 million for the tax sale. So there are a number of one-time revenues that are in the current year budget that not all of them will be are being proposed in next year's budget. I'm in the process of moving some capital items into the operating budget. There are a number of smaller items, smaller dollar amount items that are in the capital budget that I would like to move into the operating budget. I plan to do this over in a two-phase process. One is to not bond for them in the future, but to use existing bond premium that we have to pay and use that cash to pay for those projects. And then because we don't want this to be a shock, another shock to the operating budget, that we would eventually phase them into the operating budget, but not to do it all in one fell swoop. We talked about the unresolved collective bargaining agreements. We can't obviously talk about details, but we can share with you that the experiences around the state of cities and towns recently with settled agreements has been in the range of 2.5% to 3% a year contracts. With regard to pension costs, there is a pretty significant increase in pension costs. We went through an experience study, which is done every 4 or 5 years, and they take a look at what the assumptions have been that were used in determining the pension valuations in the past, and those get updated. The city side of the pensions were actually favorable to the budget in terms of what the impact is on the ADEC. But the impact on the impact of police and fire pensions were unfavorable, and so those are going to add to the cost of the ADEC in the future. So a lot of challenges, as the mayor pointed out, and I just wanted to go into some of the details of those. And to address some of those, particularly the revaluation, because it's a short term, and when I say short term, it's the term of the phase-in of the revaluation, and the increases that are going to be applied to taxpayers over that period of time. And because it's short term, we have a few strategies here that we're using to also provide some relief to taxpayers in the short term. One of them, as I mentioned, was the use of bond premium. We will use that to reduce our debt service each year and step it down each year, so that we're not creating a cliff in the budget. Same thing with the fund balance. Obviously we are hoping, like in the past, and we'll get into this later on in the presentation, that we won't need to use fund balance, but if we do, we'll use it as minimally as possible to again to help reduce the burden on taxpayers over the short term. We still have balance in the internal service fund, and we're able to utilize some of that in order to offset the impact on taxpayers. And then other mitigation measures that we're putting into place. Last year we had a hiring freeze that was put into place, and instead of doing that, what we're putting forth here is a 1% salary lapse citywide. So what this amounts to is a reduction equal to 1% for each of the divisions of the city. So there are savings there. The revaluation phase in, obviously that started in the current fiscal year. That's going to continue, so we'll be into year 2 next year. Increase in the personal property mill rate will go from 28 to 32. That's what's being proposed. We are looking at different, this goes into a broader category of looking at different items to different revenue generating items. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more later. We are doing another tax sale in the summer of 2026. And because of the timing of it, we will realize revenue probably if the timing works out similar to the way the last one did. We'll see a lot of the revenue up front before the actual the date of the tax sale, as people become current on their bills because they don't want their property going up for auction. We are also limiting in various ways. I mentioned the 1% salary lapse, different ways the city and the Board of Education requests, budget requests. So here are some of the highlights. We are fully funding the long-term liabilities for debt service pension and OPEB. OPEB is currently overfunded. It's over 100%. Pensions remain around just under 80%. We're limiting the spending increase overall on the city budget to the city and Board of Ed budget to 3.3% in total. The city increase is 2.5%, which is within the range of where what our request was of the departments. We wanted to be within the range of 2% to 2.5%. And so we ended at 2.5%. Board of Ed, as I mentioned, asked for 9.7%. We're recommending 4%. The assumed tax collection rate, I believe, is consistent with what it's been in the past, 98.6%. We've spoken about the motor vehicle registration compliance program, where we're looking to, again, this is another potential revenue generator for us, and we've included additional revenue from this program in 2026. The program has either started or is starting any day now. And what this is that we hired a consulting firm to go out and identify vehicles that that should be registered in Norwalk and are not. And so we are not seeing the tax revenue from them. This program has been very successful in other cities: Stanford, Danbury, Waterbury, and I believe Bridgeport is looking into it right now, and is going to pursue this. So these could be vehicles that are that are from other towns that are parked in the city, or they could be from other states that are registered in other states and should be registered in Norwalk. There's a restructuring of the recreation and park fees. Again, another revenue item here, and is more of a user fee type of revenue. Last year, this was not part of this at the time, but there was a commitment to add 3 community resource specialists. We're honoring that commitment as part of this budget to add those positions. With the reduction, with the drawdown of the fund balance, that would bring the balance down to 16% of the budget. This is our shows the details of the budget by division. One thing, you know, there are unique things, as you know from the past and working on these. There are unique things about every department, about every division, that drive their budgets, and we'll learn more about that in a few weeks when you all bring them in for their hearings and to understand more detail what's happening with their budgets. I will say generally that, and going back to the hiring freeze that was put into place, that is one of the items that's driving the increases that you see in some of the departments, because it has the effect of lowering the base, the amount for 25, and when it's because those positions were only budgeted for a half a year, and so when we implement this budget as the proposal in this budget, we would be putting those positions back in for a full year. And so that's why a lot of the increases are beyond, a lot of the increases for each of the departments may be beyond what we were hoping to get to. For example, in the finance department, there were a number of positions. There was a couple in the assessor's office, the IT department, comptroller's office. There were 5 or 6 positions that were frozen that we were only budgeting for a half a year. Now those will return to being full year positions. Revenue sources, nothing really new here, but it's always stunning to me to see it in graphic terms, just how much we rely on tax revenue, 87.5%. We will likely be seeing a decrease in investment income over the next years. Pretty sure that those rates have peaked. We'll see what happens though. I am working actively with the firm that we work with to manage our investments to go a little further out on our investments, our cash investments, yielding us a better rate. And it wouldn't be all of the cash that we have, but we are allowed to go out further than we currently do. And that would help to stabilize it, and keep that amount at a higher level. All right. And let's look at the spending side now. There's an obvious implication here. What's education funding? What's city funding? At face value, the education funding is about 54% of the budget, of the overall budget. You can see another thing to point out here is our debt service will still remain below 9.2% of the overall budget. But it is important to drill down a little deeper into the relationship and the comparison between the city and the Board of Education, because there are expenditures that the city makes that are on behalf of the Board of Education that we're required to report to the state every year. And when you take those into account, it drives up the Board of Ed's portion of the budget, where Board of Ed represents about 61% and the city represents about 39%. The biggest component of that is the largest component of that is the debt service, because all of that is within the city's budget. Okay, so what's the impact on the mill rate and the impact of the mill rate increase? Again, this is all being driven by the revaluation. I can't say all, but a lot of it is being driven by the revaluation, and in keeping with the scenarios that were done last year when the budget was adopted last year. we ran the same type of analysis based on this proposed budget and all the elements in it and what the impact would be. And so you see there the range of increase on the median taxpayer goes from between 8.4% up to 14.6%, depending on the district. And the the increases are in the hundreds of dollars. Not insignificant. I mentioned earlier on the state mandates on the motor vehicle restructuring the motor vehicle taxes and how they are taxed, what the methodology is. There were two main components to it. One of them, the one that affects Norwalk in particular most dramatically, is the requirement that the mill rate on motor vehicles be reduced to an amount that is at least as small as the lowest real estate property tax rate. In this case, we're assuming about a 22 mill rate on motor vehicles. That's down from 32.46, which is where it was. And so right there, there's a drop off of about $10 million in revenue loss. It's about almost a third of the revenue related to motor vehicles. Because of that reduction, we're applying a lower mill rate to the value. There's also a change in the valuing and the methodology used to value motor vehicles that the state has made. And what the change says is that they're no longer going to go by book value. It's going to be a straight line reduction, depreciation that will it'll be decreased by 5% a year. And after running all the numbers and all the vehicles through this new methodology, we've determined that there's about a $2 million tax revenue loss related to that. So overall, about $12 million because of this state mandate. It's good news for the taxpayers because at least for those who own a home and own a car, there will be some offset to the increase in the real estate tax increase. And you can see by district what the average amount is there from going from 32.46 down to 22. Wanted to show you the history of the fund balance. We've in the middle section there, you'll see how much has been budgeted in the past, and then how much has actually come out of fund balance. So there were a number of years, including last fiscal year, where there was a proposed amount to come out of fund balance that did not, because there was sufficient funding as it was, and there didn't need to be a drawdown of fund balance. What we're assuming here is that the $6 million approved for the current year, that we'll need to draw that down. That remains to be seen. And then what we've included in this budget proposal of $8 million. And with that, we would still be maintaining 16%, a fund balance of 16% of the overall budget. Next slide is really just a recap of the revaluation. If you wanted to look at that, it's just got some of the more details of what happened, why we are where we are. Talks about the shift from residential to commercial, and that we elected to do the phase in. And that is the end of my presentation. Again, I want to thank the, finance department, and I want to thank, Agnes and Tom especially for their work. And we'll take questions at this point.
Thank you, Jared, and I'll echo my thanks to your team for putting together such a, a well thought out presentation, a realistic budget, given all of the different variables we've got to deal with. Questions related to the presentation from the members of the BET?
Got one quick question.
Sure, Ed.
The item that you said we would be coming out of the capital budget and going into the operating budget. Is this, are these one-time expenditures, or are they items that will be taken out with regularity year after year from the capital budget and placed in the operating budget? I'm not sure I understand that.
So again, I want to be clear about this. This is going to happen in two phases. In this first year, you're not going to see them in the operating budget. They'll be paid for using bond premium that the city has. And so probably for the next 2 to 3 years, we'll do that. There are a number of different items. I would say around a dozen. Total value is about $800,000 to $1 million. These are mostly recurring items and smaller ticket recurring items.
Do you have any examples of those?
Sure. There was a lot of them are in rec and parks. There's fence maintenance, tree maintenance, a lot of maintenance types of items. So that, those are a couple of examples.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of things. Number one, again, thank you, Jared, Agnes, for your work. There's a lot of people and a lot of work that goes into to doing this. Could we get, so in your slides, you map out sort of where you see reductions in revenue, like in the motor vehicle, and where we might be able to get some offsetting increases in income. Could you put numbers to that as a bridge? See where, as a bridge from last year's budget to this year's budget?
Sure. So to give you a sense, we talked about the motor vehicle registration.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you.
We're assuming about $200,000 additional from the motor vehicle registration program, and about the same amount of revenue from the rec and parks fees, the user fees. About $200,000 from there as well.
Right, but just an overall, so in your summary, you've listed those line items. If we can actually have a number, and you mentioned it orally, if we could actually see what numbers are and how it's a bridge build up between last year and this year in looking at the differential.
Sure, I'll tell you the different revenue sources, the new revenue sources won't come anywhere near to matching what the I mean it'll be a fraction. It's going to be a fraction of what the loss, for example, the loss is related to the motor vehicle change.
That's fine. I just want to understand the ups and downs.
Yeah, it's just documenting the puts and takes, right, Ann?
Yes.
Sure.
Also, we developed what the list looks like under the Trump federal cuts, going down to the level. And Jared, with your experience at the state level, some commentary on what you think the impact is on Norwalk, on Lamont's new budget.
So there will, it's always a judgment call. I'll go to the state first. It's always a judgment call whether or not to include what the governor's proposing in his budget in a city budget. My inclination has always been not to, because I know from experience that there are a lot of changes that happen between his proposal and what ultimately gets adopted. I can say that there was one municipal aid item that was reduced in the budget. And I believe the dollar amount, I have to go back and look at it, but I believe the dollar amount was somewhere around $400,000. And that was pilot funding. That was all that I know of. There was an increase, there's a proposed increase in ECS and education funding. Because of the way that funding is structured now, that funding goes to the Board of Education and into their budget. It's Alliance district money. It's close to $1 million in increase. Again, it's a proposal from the governor, not a it's not final yet.
And so what programs or grants we might have are federal funded or oriented that might be at risk under Trump?
We're still meeting and still asking questions like that. We don't have any firm answers yet. We did have a conversation with Congressman Himes in his office, and I would say one of the kind of broad takeaways that I heard from that presentation was that if there is money that's already been appropriated at the federal level, then that money could not be unilaterally just taken away by the administration. That would have to go through Congress to be in order for that to be removed or taken away. So I'm not aware of anything in the city budget that is that's affected by any of the executive orders that the president has issued.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he has tried to freeze that, but legally he can't. But we have not lost money or money frozen because of any of his executive orders, as you can see. So.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
It's a very fluid situation. It's, and there's a lot of talk about what the impact is. There's a lot of and so a lot of changes to the original proposals that were put out, and so we're trying to stay in tune with everything, and we'll be able to make changes as they come about, but I'm not anticipating a large impact on the FY26 operating budget.
Right.
There may be more on the capital side.
Any talk from our municipal bond consultants about, given the potential loss of income to these and the volatility, the increased risk, how that might rate ratings and or rates?
And could you repeat that? You're breaking up a little bit, and I didn't get the full question.
From our municipal bond consultant, given that we live in a much more volatile period in terms of federal funding, and there's a lot more risk in municipalities of potentially losing funding, has that played or do they expect it to play out in the bond market, in the issuance market, in terms of how the rating agencies will look at municipalities and their rating, and spreads that the market may be demanding as a premium given the additional volatility and risk. I think it's too early to tell, but I think that is something that we should be aware of and think of.
It's a good point, and I think you're right. I think it is too early to tell. Even they, you know, our consultants and other investment firms, that I don't think they know exactly what's going to happen, and so it's a question mark, and we'll definitely keep our eye on it. We get monthly reports from our municipal financial advisor, from Bill, and so we can see what's happening in the market every month with regard to municipal issuances in the area and throughout the country. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on those, and talk to him about have those conversations about timing when we go to issue, and if he's starting to see any of these any of the potential changes that and how they're playing out, if they're going to affect the timing of our issuance.
Understood. And just last question. Thank you for sending on your transmittal letter regarding the capital expenditures. What is the process on the approval of the CapEx? And am I correct that the BET sets the cap, the CapEx, but then the approves the capital expenditure budget?
That's correct.
And when do we set that cap?
Tom, do you have that date in front of you?
Looks like April 1st.
Okay.
On or before April 1st. So we will probably do that. Just looking at the calendar here. Yeah, the BET meeting will be April 7th that month, so we'll probably do it on March 3rd, the next meeting.
Okay. And how far will planning and zoning have gotten through their review of the capital budget? Will they be done?
Yeah, they'll be done. They no longer have a line item detail in terms of adds and cuts. Their marching orders, for lack of a better expression, is basically to ensure alignment with the plan of conservation and development. So they go through each line item and make sure that it's aligned with the POCD. They can also make recommendations or suggestions in terms of whether something should be operating or capital, which is another reason why we're adjusting that a bit as we go forward, just to more properly align the maintenance and repair types of things into the operating budget.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions for Jared?
Yes, Ed, this is Troy. Jared, thank you, and for you and your team's work on this first cut of the operating budget. With all I just want to make a few quick comments. With uncertainty from obviously from the Fed and states really giving us all a lot of agita every day. I think it sounds like you obviously we can do what we can do there, but that's just obviously something that's very concerning to me with regard to the budget. Also, as we move into phase 2 or year 2 of the phase in, obviously people are going to be a little alarmed. The numbers do jump up in year 2, as you see. And I know we had the built-in arbitrary numbers into each one of the 4 phase-in years. And I think your 3.3% is that a little higher than what we built in? I think it is, right, Jared?
It is a little bit higher. What was assumed with the analysis done last year was about 3%. Was 3%.
Okay.
And so, but I'll tell you, it's pretty incredible how close these numbers are. The percentage increases are compared to the analysis that was done last year. Each of the districts is, and Tom can clarify this, probably within a couple of tenths of a percentage point to the analysis that was done last year.
Jared, let me jump in there on your behalf. I went back and looked at that, Troy, while we were in the meeting. District by district, as Jared just said, everything is within 0.2 of a point of what we originally forecast last year. So it's slightly up, but it is 0.1 of a percentage point.
Yeah, that's something we could review further. Yes, it's obviously we just got it. I'm trying to compare, but I'm happy to see that is the starting point, because these numbers are getting when you start to see 14% increases for 1 year, that's very concerning to me for people on fixed income and for anybody. Never mind your fixed income or not. And the last point I'm saying is regarding the schools. You know, we have obviously the 2 major schools. Good to see that the South North School is moving along very nicely. By the end of this year, we should probably be that school should be done and occupied, which is great with uncertainty. But obviously, the high school is still going on, and that's obviously a very big number. I just want to say that we're not talking about the capital budget tonight, but I know you also made your first cut or pass on that, and I just think this is the time we have to be very cautious. And a pause in increases or trying to come back to, at least with regard to the capital budget, when we're paying it down every year, which I think is about 38 million. Anything higher than that in these uncertain times, I think is it's something we really have to take a hard look at. So once again, thank you for your efforts. And will we be sitting down with departments again as in previous years, Jared, or is that planned still?
Yeah, that if in the earlier part of the presentation, that takes place basically March 5th through
Okay.
the
Great.
rest of
Thank
the-
you. Once again, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Additional questions or comments? Again, Jared, I applaud the fiscal responsibility. I know no one's going to be happy with where we are, but as a starting point, it's where we need to be. And I think we all need to respect the needs of our citizens in that regard. Mr. Mayor, before we move to other topics, any closing remarks on the operating budget presentation?
No, thank you. I pretty much said what I wanted to say at the beginning. I think after we looked at the numbers here, I think even though we were prepared, it's still shocking. And we have to do everything we can to keep, especially those people living on a fixed income. Some people have paid their mortgage off, but they can't afford their taxes. So I appreciate all the work that the finance department has done. Jared and Tom and Agnes really worked a lot on this and presented us with some alternatives. And I do also appreciate the BET, the Board of Estimate and Taxation, for all the hard work that you've done over the years. So onward and upward.
There we go. All right. Thank you. Tom, I believe that's our full agenda. I know in our packet is the Norwalk Public School construction update, but I think that was just for our information and awareness this month. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We do not have Alan or Jim Giuliano with us today, but if you do have any questions, we can try to answer them or take them back to those guys and get a response.
Okay. Being none, I believe we are at the end of our agenda. Hence, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Artie. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.